I see that Wesel, who's kind of on the cutting edge as usual, I see he's in the call, has worked out that you can run the node from the 11th and the farmer from the 13th. But until we've got a handle on exactly what the problem is and what we're going to advise as the official route forward, we advise you to stick with the build from the 11th on the advanced CLI.
Definitely. And hopefully we can get that 13th release moving forward here rather shortly as well. As we mentioned earlier, also we just wanted to give you all an update on our support flow. We are, as we mentioned, we're really working on expanding our database as far as frequent asked questions and having a good resource for users to find when they're searching for support questions, trying to resolve the various issues they may be having on their farmers. Keeping that in mind, as always, we can continue to ask questions in Discord, but note that if we need to get to that point where we need to escalate it to a developer, we will likely ask you to post it on the forums. This is really just simply because the forums is an easier place to tag the developers. They check it more regularly and they can keep more on top of that area, as obviously Discord can get a little hectic and a little bit busy lately. But also it helps ensures that no information is siloed. That is one major downfall with Discord, unfortunately, is information just kind of slowly vanishes and disappears over time. As it gets further and further in the chat history, it's harder and harder to search for it. So obviously if someone has some issue that's already been answered, they can try and search for it through Discord, but oftentimes it will be a little bit of a headache and kind of problematic to actually find those answers. And even if they do find the question, to follow that discussion all the way to completion can also be difficult. So this is where we're really trying to push for using the forums, is so we can actually have some of these questions be kind of established as FAQs with clear solutions and a clear, followable discussion as well. So please don't take it personal if we, push you to the forums as far if you're having any questions. More so, look at it as an opportunity to be kind of, escalated, if you will, up to a core dev to hopefully help answer our questions in more detail if if we haven't quite been able to get to that point yet. Without further ado, I guess we can hop into some of the common questions we've been seeing with farmers over these past couple weeks. Jim, did you want to start and take it away?
Yeah, I did just want to quickly touch on your last point about the forum, Justin. So there's two things that we can achieve with the forum that's harder to do in Discord. We understand they're different tools, but we are looking with the forum. It's public, so being a Discord member isn't a barrier to entry for Subspace, and it's scalable as well. So common questions, as Justin says, when they scroll past, we tend to find ourselves answering the same question many times when a quick search on the forum can find it. And I'm actually, before we launch into the regular questions, there's a great example in our chat here. So Zorinox, old school member of our community, how to enable more log output. I have a node that doesn't sync for 4 days, only reached 13k height, no idea why. Did all the usual suspects already, like restart, deleted the node, etc. Okay, so this is a wonderful example of a question that I think many people would appreciate being able to know the answer to. And in fact, we have a post prepared. So Zorinox, I'm just going to post in the chat here. Someone raised exactly that question earlier. They want to, enable a greater depth of logging, and the best person to answer that question, like which logging or which flag, which debug flag, for example, is most appropriate to activate to get you that additional information, has been asked on the forum. Nazar does cruise the forums, and I'm hoping that he's going to pop up at some point and chime in with something appropriate. But we really appreciate that, the fact that you're self-starting there, and you're looking to try and work out by examining the logs yourself. So yeah, it might be worth subscribing to that forum post, Orinox. I'm just going to mark your question as answered, but do reply if there's anything else you want to ask. Okay, so our farmer questions. So we've got some prepared, and our first one, I'm going to skip to the first one that I added there, Justin, is can I use a snapshot to sync faster? So obviously we've had a bit of a race. Since we activated the rewards last Thursday, there is an amount of time that your node is going to take to sync up to chain head. So while we don't have like official docs to support syncing, what we found is that, again, community members, ingenious, inventive community members, I believe led by Dragon P, who corrected me quite rightly, experimented and found that, yeah, you can copy the node database. So I would class it as unofficially supported until we can get some documentation together. And another interesting and inventive questions from the community in that area are: can I move a plot from one machine to another? And a really clever one: can I target a plot started on Pulsar with the advanced CLI? So I was asked this question, and I didn't know. Obviously, something I've never tried before. And the community member came back a day later and said, "Yep, I managed to do it." So we don't have docs for doing that, and you've got to make sure that you're perfect about how you configure your advanced CLI parameters to make sure that you're pointing at the right files that Pulsar's created. But yeah, the answer to both of those questions is yes, apparently. Yeah, if any of our wonderful community members do want to produce like a first draft of their process, we will very happily, give you the recognition you deserve and a shout out if we can enshrine it in our documentation. So yeah, that was the first kind of regular farmer question. Justin, do you want to do the next one?
Definitely. So another one that we've been seeing a lot of questions. And real quick to comment on the prior one. It's really great to see Dragon P, taking the initiative to find these kinds of things out. It's worth noting that with in-development software, there are sometimes questions that even we don't have answers to. So that's one thing we always appreciate with your guys' helpful testing and feedback is, we can all learn a little bit of something and continue to move forward. But as far as the next question goes, one we've been seeing a lot is the rate at which I'm earning TSSC seems to be dropping or really slowing down in the past few days. What may be causing this? Is there anything that I can do on my end? Overall, this is kind of a multifaceted question. I mean, obviously, there's always the chance that your farmer can be facing some issues, but more likely what is happening is we're seeing, the explosive growth of the space pledged. As this expands, your chance to actually win a block will obviously reduce a little bit as we see more and more people. At the end of the day, the size of your plot, divided by the total capacity that's been allocated to the network is your percentage chance, effectively, of winning a reward. Granted, there's a little bit more nuance to it with the voting mechanism, which is a wider solution range where you can also win some rewards. But very broadly, as the network gets more space, you will start to win less blocks or have a less statistical chance at least. It's worth noting that just in the past about a week or so, we've seen an increase from, probably the 600, 700 gigabyte range to, as Jim mentioned earlier, 2.5 petabytes. So pretty significant growth. Another thing that occurs with significant growth is every time we see a doubling of the network, we will trigger a replotting event on the farmers. So ultimately what this means is as the farmer, you're storing part of the subspace history, ensuring that everyone has a portion of the network's history so we can always rebuild that and verify that. As obviously the total space pledge grows, the history grows as well. So then there becomes a situation where maybe, just for the sake of example, if there was 100 blocks now, let's say, okay, only blocks 0 through 50 were plotted on the farmers, and since we've grown so quickly, now blocks 50 through 100 are not necessarily stored on the farmer. So that's where this replotting event is triggered every time the capacity of the network doubles. This can also cause a slight slowdown in your rewards, obviously, because your farmer is having to start to replot. As it's replotting, there will cause some slowdown and lack of rewards during that process. Luckily, these replotting events will get more and more spaced out, because obviously the more space we have pledged, the harder it is to double. It's a lot harder to double 2.5 petabytes than it is 500 gigabytes, or rather terabytes. So in that case, we will see this less and less, but it is something to keep in mind, especially for these earlier versions, as we start to kind of expand, this incentivized testnet.
I've just dropped a link to a slightly more in-depth discussion on the replotting, and the process is essential to the protocol. It's how we're able to make sure that new data entering the network is spread evenly and efficiently across nodes. As Justin said, you can expect that as the growth of the network stabilizes, we expect it to slow down at some point once we've captured all that spare capacity in the whole world. You should find that replotting becomes a much more rare event. I see we've got a request to speak. Zorinox, do you want to join us on the stage?
Hello?
Hey, Zorinox. Hello.
You hear me well?
Very well, loud and clear.
Very good. I wanted to comment on what you just said. With version September 5, the slowdown that I've observed was related to the fact that once the plot, you can have a plot file, say 5 terabytes, but it's obviously not plotted 5 terabytes from the start. So what I've noticed is that once the plot itself is plotted, say, in the range of 1 to 1.5 terabytes, it's not earning rewards anymore. It's not voting anymore. It's not signing anymore. Version 11 has addressed that to some degree, but I still have multiple farmers that once they're plotting, they're not signing. And I'm not trying to bring this up as another issue, but just to explain, there's another reason in play right now for which we may not know the cause for a slowdown.
So that's really interesting. So we heard the community that on the until the Sept 11th release, larger plots. I think it was 11th. No, was it 5th? Sorry, I'm getting mixed up now. That larger plots just seemed to there was like a sweet spot, which was anecdotally somewhere around 400, 500 gig, where you'd earn increasing rewards and then they'd start to drop off. So this is another issue, Zorinox, is what you're saying. And it occurs at like a higher number of sectors plotted, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes, and I have not studied enough. I'm using the advanced CLI, but I struggle a bit to really get the statistics out of the system. It may be a bit on me on not reading enough on documentation, etc. But at the moment, I can only tell on a plot that is 7.5 terabytes large, if it's plotted between 10 and 20%, it stops signing. I have multiple farmers that haven't signed anything for days. It's just plotting. It keeps plotting. The plotting percentages, they keep going up, but it's not signing anything. When I restart the farmer, it will sign for a while. And from what I would say by observation, up and until it starts plotting. Once it starts plotting, it won't sign anymore.
Okay, that's really interesting. So it sounds like something's becoming saturated at some point there.
Something is saturated there, yes. So a test that I started before, I'm actually on my way back from a doctor's appointment, but a test that I started before I left the house is removing the amount of plots that the farmer has to deal with. I'm going to see if using much less plot space makes a difference. But on the other hand, I have very large farmers, 100 terabytes combined, and it just works. It just works fine.
So
It's not yet. I can't really pin the reason for it yet. Um, that one machine that I'm referring to is out of my farm is by far the most powerful machine. Terabyte of RAM and 256 Cypress threads. Really not sure what's wrong with it.
I mean, this is what the test net's for, Zorinox. It's
Yep.
to find out where these problems surface so we can attack them.
Yep.
That is super interesting. I see that Wessel's put a comment, and I've been reading his update. So he's using I think it's a 13900 CPU. So latest gen sort of desktop CPU rather than server CPU. I believe he said it's got 8 performance cores, which I would imagine are somewhere between 4 and 5 gigahertz. So we are seeing this kind of as this could be, as we home in on exactly where the problem is, maybe it is something to do with core speed. But what I'd really love is to try and draw this conversation out into the forum, because you're not just going to get mine and Justin's guesswork, shall we say, or educated guesswork to do us our due. I give ourselves enough credit. But you'll also have access to the devs who may well be able to give us additional insights and maybe even, offer up some debug flags, which can help us really tighten up exactly where the slowdown's coming from. How does that sound, Zorinox?
Yeah, I can make an effort to put that into the forum. And if you don't mind, I will comment on my reluctance now and in the past of using the forum is simply that I like to use my handle, like my actual handle, but I don't like Google referring to my gazillions of blog posts all over the internet. This is really why I kind of like it being hidden inside Discord, but that's my personal view on why I don't like forums in general.
That's great feedback. So you'd rather not have your handle attached to comments out in the public. That's great. That's exactly the kind of feedback we're after, because while we're trying to, hopefully it makes sense what we're trying to do with a more public knowledge base, more organised as well. Discord can be a bit hectic at times, but we'll take that feedback back, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. Sorry, Knox. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand the chaos that you can have in Discord, but I thought that this section that you have set up where it's almost like a forum, but within and inside Discord, it kind of works like a middle ground.
So knowledge base within Discord. That's
not necessarily the knowledge base. Where I can ask questions in Discord. Like I understand, like asking questions in a public channel, like in general, that's chaotic, right? You will answer the same questions like a zillions of times. You will miss a lot of questions. You can't just have eyes on the general chats all the time. But the section that you set up where you can create a topic and then post something, it's almost like a forum, right? Farmers support or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of works well for me. It's similar to a forum. You can search through it. It's not random questions all over the place. You can see the history. It's easier to find. But it doesn't put you into the Google index for your lifetime.
Right. Okay. We appreciate that, and we're going to take that away. I've made some notes here. We're going to see if what we can do. I mean, we do use the posts for farmer support, absolutely. So maybe it's a case of we can sort of get the conversation going in those threads there, where it's not quite nicely organised, but then elevate it to the forum another way. But we'll think about that. Again, thank you, Zorinox. Okay. So should we take a question? I've been trying to tag all the questions with Still question marks, Justin. So the first one I have here is from BO88 from Pyra Finance or Pyra Finance. The issue of replotting is becoming increasingly challenging for farmers. So yeah, we hear you. We've kind of already discussed this, but if you do want to drill into it a bit further, I've linked a forum post. It is an essential part of the protocol, and we appreciate that it's rights as well. So there's SSDware, but where we are now in a test net that's growing super aggressively, we're seeing more than we would expect on mainnet. And we also, we've heard anecdotally as well that while we're busy replotting, maybe we're not earning as many rewards. But remember, that's for everyone. Everyone's got to replot at the same rate. So thanks for that question, BO88. Justin, do you want to pick one?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Looks like we have from Credo. What about the TSSC from previous incentivized testnets? So as far as the previous incentivized testnets go, and those of you who have been with us for a while, we've gone through many different versions at this point. We had our Aries stress test initially. Then we had Gemini 1 incentivized testnet, Gemini 2, Part 1 and Part 2, and now we're into Gemini 3. So all these various stages, I'm sure it is a little confusing on what the status of all of the TSSC is that you farmed, what was incentivized, what wasn't, kind of how that is going to look in the bigger picture of things. This is something the ecosystem team's currently been trying to work out. We do have all of that information. We have all of the networks backed up, and we have all of that on-chain data. And we've been going through it and kind of cleaning it up a little bit so we can provide an easier way for you all to check, to see exactly what your prior incentivized testnet TSSC is looking like. We don't have anything fully ready just yet, but it is something I can say, probably keep your eyes out for. I'm sure there will be we hope to have a couple nice utilities that the ambassador team and some of the community members have been helping us work on as well. So keep your eyes peeled, but worry not. There will be a easy utility to check for this kind of thing as we move forward. Obviously, especially as we approach mainnet, and it becomes more and more relevant where those prior testnet tokens are.
Absolutely. Thanks, Justin. So Wolfgang asks, should I disable the node because I'm not earning any TSSC? I installed plot 150 gigabytes. So Wolfgang, we're going to need a little more context there. So are you synced? Have you finished plotting? What do your farmer logs look like? The best thing to do would probably be to raise a post in hash farmer support. And we can ask you the questions, we can explain how to get the information we need to work out what's going on. I mean, should you disable the node? That's entirely up to you. Obviously, if you're not earning any TSSC, we understand that that's a bit disheartening. But we would like to understand if you have a problem we haven't seen before, maybe, or if there might be some quick fix, something that we can advise you on to get you earning TSSC. So yeah, please feel free to ping myself or Justin from a post in farmer support. Thanks. Thanks for the question, Wolfgang. And I see that I'm not sure how to say this, Winelby. I know that 3F is the last phase before going to mainnet. Would you consider one more phase if something goes wrong? Well, of course nothing's going to go wrong, Winelby, but absolutely. Now, I'm just going to check you there as well, because 3F is not the last phase. Gemini 3 is the last test net before mainnet beta. We are currently running 3F. If you check out the recent community call that we held last week, you will hear from Jeremy and Nazar, actually. They're both kind of provide a rundown on the features that we need to be ready for mainnet, and we are fully expecting that there will be a 3G. Now, there could be further networks as well. We're not entirely sure. We are also hoping to upgrade the network with forklift runtime upgrades as well, which sounds super exciting because it is, which will mean that we can stay on the same network, but without being so disruptive that we have to kind of shut everything down, start from block zero, and everyone has to sync up again. So we are definitely considering more phases. We need features so that we can run our stake wars, which is on the horizon. Watch this space for updates about that, bringing execution and operators into the picture. But yeah, if something bad goes wrong and we have to reset the network, since we started talking about incentivized testnet, we've set the expectation that we fully, expecting that will happen. There will be resets. We know there will be. And what we hope is that there won't be too many, because there aren't any massive showstoppers that we find along the way. But thanks for your question, Winelby.
And it's one of those things that I think we've said time and time again, and continue to strive towards. Of, we're trying to, I guess, do it right rather than rushing to mainnet. So as we said this a couple years ago, and I think it's still relevant now. Is we'll take as many versions as needed to ensure that everything is correct, buttoned up, and where we hope it to be once we get to mainnet beta, and where we don't have any unforeseen issues arise on us.
Absolutely. DJ Eyes, I'm going to say there. Is there a variance in farming performance between SATA and NVMe? Great question. So I would suggest that you will get greater performance from NVMe. The architecture is faster, so you'll be able to read data, solve solutions, produce solutions quicker. So is there a variance? I would say that yes, there is. Can I quantify it? I'm afraid I can't. I would not suggest going out and spending, boatloads of cash on PCI 5 NVMEs. Maybe that's your bag. Maybe you already have a bunch. But I would love if anyone out there has some rigs where they're able to do some side-by-side comparisons. So keep everything constant apart from run on SATA, NVMe 3, 4, 5. I'd be really, really interested to hear the results there. But I'm going to say a tentative yes, that running on faster hardware should increase your farming performance. But I don't have any stats to back that up, I'm afraid.
I have some stats for you, Jim. So SATA generally, in most cases, will max out around 600 megabytes a second, versus where NVMEs will, usually up to about 3.5, almost 4 gigabytes a second. And this isn't necessarily farming. This is just broadly as their integrations, are being connected to a computer and their speeds. So taking that into mind, I definitely would agree that NVMEs are probably more preferred. Not that SATAs won't work. It's just, it is a pretty significant speed change between those two. So NVMe would be ideal. But you can definitely, or PCIe obviously, but you can definitely get away with SATA if needed, but definitely going to have a little bit of a slower experience.
Can I make a comment to this? What you just said, Justin?
Oh, please do.
Just from my own observations, looking at the I/O stats and the monitoring, I don't see anywhere near gigabytes per second ever used, either read or written. The plotting process is extremely CPU memory bound. The I/O does not seem to be the bottleneck. That said, NVMe drives have a much better random I/O capacity versus SATA or SAS SSDs. So I'm not sure how much random I/O is actually needed in order to support the plotting and then the farming. But the gigabytes per second don't matter. That's not what I see as a bottleneck at all. I see low hundreds of megabytes per second on a system that has 100 terabyte of flash as the sum.
That's
Definitely.
a great insight. Yeah, sorry, Justin, go on.
No, go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say that's a great insight. Again, Zorinox, thank you. So you're saying that SATA is never really approaching kind of the limit of the bandwidth there. It's happening elsewhere in your rig, which makes a lot of sense.
Right. It's somewhere else, yes.
Mm-hmm.
A system with, say, 10 8 terabyte NVMe drives, the total read and write I see while it's plotting is maybe 200 megabytes a second. And I can only pin that to two reasons, possible reasons. One is the plotting process is, as designed, very CPU memory bound. That's why it just can't, the CPUs can't produce data faster. So that's why you don't see more happening. Or it's very random I/O. The nature of it is random I/O. When it's random I/O, you won't see your 5 gigabytes per second if you have 4 kilobyte blocks random I/O. You will see hundreds of megabytes at best, especially on desktop grade NVMe drives.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm running two farmers. One is SATA and one's NVMe, and they are roughly, they're getting the amount of rewards I would expect based on plot size. So I guess where I went in answering this question, is there a variance in farming performance? I guess if you took it to the nth degree and there was no bottleneck anywhere else, then I would suggest that NVMe should win out or everything else being equal. And when I said I don't have stats, I'm guessing that farmers are more interested in, well, you'll earn 10 more coins a day at 1 terabyte plots on NVMe. I don't have any numbers like that, I'm afraid. But again, thanks, Zorinox. I mean, so what that means in the real world case is, while theoretically NVMe will win out, it sounds like using either will be fine. You'll get the same performance. Your bottleneck will be somewhere else, not over the interface.
That's what it looks like right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the time will show. If the bottleneck is random I/O, then NVMe drives will win. And then even within the space of NVMe drives, you have different type of quality of drives. You have desktop grade, low end, high end, but then you have server grade, low end, high end, and then you have read intense optimized drive. You have mixed use drives. You have write intense optimized drives, where all of these may support one or the other case better. I mean, you know that historically SLC drives, I mean, they don't exist anymore really, but MLC, TLC, QLC drives, they don't perform well in my experience. So if you have a QLC NVMe drives, they are not much better, or they in many cases won't be better than a SATA drive, a high quality SATA drive. You may actually wear out your QLC drive. That is one of the things I haven't really done some homework on yet, is trying to collect some data about how much data is actually written over time per plot. So say a 1 terabyte plot is plotted in a time frame of 2 weeks. How much data has actually been written to the drive? How much write amplification do we see? And things like that.
Yeah, and there's another variable there as well, of course, is because Subspace is write once and then replot, and as the network grows, as the network stops growing so quickly, you'd see a drop in replotting. So if you join the network at the start, you're probably going to see more write than if you join it, 6 months in, or even 1 month in, because you're going to find that we're not growing as quickly, which isn't triggering as much replot.
Yes.
Okay. We are an SSD friendly protocol, and we understand that SSD wear is a thing. So we are sympathetic to that. But yeah, great discussion, guys. Really interesting. Thank you, DJIs, for the question. Justin, do you want to kick us off with another one?
Yeah, the next one we have is Capybara asking, does the size of cache memory in Windows 10 matter for best farm performance? So this is kind of a multifaceted question. It definitely, can come into play. Really what it's going to boil down to is, how much actual physical memory do you have? Ultimately, the cache memory is really going to be utilized if you're low in physical memory, where Windows will kind of offset and try to balance those two. We do have a memory-bound encoding in the dilithium consensus, so this definitely will be a factor as far as some of the plotting processes. But I wouldn't expect it to be, I guess it's not going to affect your consensus or anything along those lines. Really, it's just going to affect, I guess, your setup cost, if you will, the amount of time and effort that it may take for your plotting and maintenance of your node to complete. But overall, from there, once you're plotted and up and running, it's not like your cache and memory is going to affect, or at least it shouldn't, in execution affect your ability to farm for rewards on your existing plot.
Thanks, Justin. I see that Capybara has actually made a sneaky ninja edit to the question while you've been talking. So he's provided that he's using a Xeon E5 and 256 gig of DDR. So a point I need to make is that we don't have every setup, every kind of processor and every configuration of RAM. So the phase we are at now, testnet, is where we find out what works and what doesn't. We'd love to hear your experience on a Xeon E5 with 256 gig of DDR, Capybara. You're able to, on farmer office hours or in, the farmer chat, compare and contrast your experience with your peers. We are reaching for the edges. We're the pictures coming into resolution of the behavior of Gemini 3F. Make no mistake, as new features are introduced to the protocol, the performance profile, what works and what doesn't work, could well change. And we've already had, an example recently where Nazar has made a change to the farmer to work, to parallelize work, which is how we made that big jump when we found that sweet spot was around 500 gig. Now you can run much larger plots. So, we need your feedback. We need to know, we need to understand where these problems come, and we need to understand enough about your environment so that we can, make a judgment on where the problem is so we can attack it. But yeah, great question. Thank you, Capybara.
If I may add a comment briefly, I have a farmer with 80 terabyte on it, and I split the two 80 terabyte between two farmer processes that run on each their own ports, and the system has two 24-core CPUs, so it's a dual socket system, and it only had 64G of RAM. I ran out of RAM. I bumped it up to 69 gigabytes of DDR4, and now it's fine. So 69 gigabytes of RAM is enough to run 80 terabytes of plots from my observation here. So quarter terabyte of RAM is plenty.
So, Zorinox, you amaze me with the scale of your operation, my friend. So in case anyone didn't realise that, Zorinox has worked out that you can run you did say 80 terabytes across two farmers on 69 gig of RAM.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't use that much RAM. It's actually very gentle.
Okay, I'll provide that feedback to the Tsar. We're gentle on the RAM. That's wonderful. We love empirical stats like that. Where
I mean,
you know
more
where
RAM
we
is always good. It's never not used, especially on Linux. It's all the block cache is very good, but as for the memory required by the process, it seems very gentle. 69G of RAM is not that much on a server grade system.
right.
Or not anymore. It's 2023.
It used to be storage is cheap. Now memory is cheap as well.
It used to be a fortune to go that, but no. The question that was raised was about 256G of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. You can run a lot of. From my observation, you will be able to run a lot of farming on that machine. You will be bound by your CPUs. They don't seem the latest.
So, relating that back to Capybara's question, then I don't think the RAM will be your bottleneck there. The amount you've got on your rig, so that's cool. I feel like we should have like a farmers rigs channel, Justin. Maybe we should float that idea where people can show off their hardware. It sounds like we've got some guys with some really exotic kit out there, and I love it when a picture gets dropped into the chat. Maybe we need a home for that. I feel like Zorinox is showing off a little bit, but I like it as well. Okay, how are we doing on questions, Justin? Do we have any new ones? I see there's some interesting chat going on, which is wonderful to see.
Great discussion. I don't think I see any follow-up questions. Looks like Wessel definitely agrees with you, Zoran, that CPU is going to more likely be the bottleneck before you face issues with the read and write speeds or RAM. Let's see. One from Animu is a CPU with 5 gigahertz is faster download plot than a CPU with 3 gigahertz. It's a very multifaceted question. It's really going to boil down to the overall core numbers in conjunction with the clock speed. I would say if they're comparable processors, obviously 5 gigahertz would be a little bit quicker, especially because some of our things are still need improvements on parallelization within the CPU side of things go. So being that some things are still utilizing single cores, obviously a faster gigahertz will definitely help. Not to say though that as we optimize and further finalize the protocol, that we would expect more parallelization and more proper utilization of the CPU, in which case, we might see more and more advantages from, multi-threaded processors such as like, the Threadrippers or things along those lines with, 16 or 32 cores. Overall, the CPU, I would say, while it is, the biggest bottleneck, it shouldn't be too restrictive on, what CPU you need either. It's not like we're not proof of work, so we try to not overutilize and over-index on the CPU power. As long as it's relatively modern, you should be capable of plotting and moving forward. But as Jim mentioned, this is all theoretical, and from the technical specification perspective, we would still love to see your real-world experiences and tests, and be curious to hear any feedback you may have.
Absolutely. And Farmer Office Hours is a great place to come and share those experiences. Justin and I hang out on Discord quite a lot. Our working hours they don't overlap very much. So one of us is usually online or will be in a few hours. So yeah, do keep us updated. Okay, we've got a few little questions I'm just going to rattle through, Justin. So, Crypto Addict, how much I missed seems like a lot. Oh, you've missed so much. I take it you're late to the party. You're lucky though, because Justin is recording this. I'm hoping he's clicked the button. So,
I
we
have
should get
indeed
this up
clicked
on
the
YouTube.
button.
Wonderful. So yeah, you'll be able to check this out on YouTube. Keep an eye out. We will post a link later on, Crypto Addict. And while I'm talking directly to you, Crypto Addict, thank you for the support you're providing. I see you helping our newbie farmers in the chat, and in fact everyone. We've got a great crop of guys here. I recognise the names. You know, I can see Sparks and Wesel. Zorinox has come up on stage, and we really appreciate the time you take to explain concepts to new farmers. We were all there once, and we really appreciate you. Can a farmer that was plotted on a node switch to a new node? Now, I don't want to open another can of worms. It's not officially supported, but there is chat that you... so the problem with a farm, if we're talking about a plot, is if you try and sign a solution from the same plot at the same time, you will be blacklisted. So your plot will no longer be any use to anyone. So can you move it? I'm told that you can. So what you would do is turn your farmer off in one location, move the plot, and then start it up in a new location. Let us know how you get on.
His question's actually the inverse. Can a farmer that was plotted on a node switch to a new node? So meaning farmer and plot stay the same, but node and node database presumably change. Which the answer to that side, as long as it's the same network and the same chain and the same version, should work just fine.
That's a great point Justin just made about it being the same version. So we haven't asked everyone to do a wipe or a reset since the version that you're running on your source node. Okay. Why did Windows use more RAM than Linux? Always 99%. So Animu, good question. So I see that on my Windows rig. If you actually run apps, the RAM is actually there. Despite it reporting that I'm at 99%, it's to do with the way that Task Manager is reporting memory allocation. And if you take a look down the bottom, you'll see that Emil's posted an explanation. And if you look at, if you can take a look, I'll see if I can find it before the call ends. There is a forum post about exactly that question. Vero, does plot size can be reduced similarly as increased just by changing config file? Yes, you can size up and down. I admit that I've only sized up. If anyone who's sized down would give us a thumbs up on Vero's question, that would be super useful. I am told it does work, but I started small and gradually grew.
I've sized down, but I have no idea if plotted data is truncated by that process. I mean, yeah. Let's say you have a terabyte plotted and you're sizing to 500G. Is the system capable of retaining 500G plotted data, or does it just start with an empty 500G plot? I don't know that.
As far as in my experience, it's maintained the existing 500 gigabytes on the plot and just cut off the extra, if you will.
Okay, so it's able to slice off just the correct amount.
Yeah, that's my understanding from reading the release notes when resizing was introduced. I haven't gone down, as I say. I know that when you go up, it says old size equals new size equals, and you start plotting new sectors. But yeah, my understanding is that you if you halve it, you will be immediately you'll be fully plotted immediately.
It looks like Wessel confirming that as well from his perspective.
Thank you, Wessel. I thought I knew someone out there would have tried it. Okay. Have we compared farming performance between Windows and Linux? That's from Trandin, I'm going to say. So I've got, we don't have official stats as far as I know, although Justin may correct me. I've got one node running on Windows and one node running on Linux, and they are, as I would expect, one is now half the size of the other, and I'm getting roughly half the rewards. So I'm not seeing any real big difference between the two. Be interested again to hear if anyone out there has performed a similar experiment. Ideally, what we'd like is to have, same hardware, different OS, same size plot, kick them off at the same time. Who's plotted first? Who's earning more rewards? Be really interested to hear that. But I don't think we've got anything official. Justin, are you aware of anything?
I don't believe so. I can say from my personal experience, I do run a Windows and Linux node as well. In these later versions and some of the newer versions we're using, it is pretty comparable. I can say in the past there were some issues where some of the frameworks and underlying utilities that we're using within the Subspace network weren't necessarily optimized for Windows as good. One example is Substrate only used single threads for the longest time on Windows. I believe that's been resolved at this point, but there is definitely probably still room for some minor optimizations here and there, but it has been my experience that they're relatively in parity as well.
That's certainly been my experience, yeah. Okay, Justin, we're at the top of the hour. So we could talk all night for me and all day for Justin, but we're just going to have to wait for the next farmer office hours, I think. So, Justin, do you want to close us out?
Definitely. So as always, we wanted to thank you all for your guys' continued dedication and support, especially for the wonderful, productive discussion today with you, Zoran, Wessel, and many of our other great farmers who have been helping us out as far as testing and learning more about ways to improve our network. We are trying to do these office hours every other week, so feel free to tune back in. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them our way, or even just throw them in this chat, the event channel chat. It will remain open in between events, so always feel free to toss in some questions that you may want to ask in person in those as they come up. As mentioned, over the past couple events, definitely stay tuned for some of the upcoming things. We have Stake Wars and our Space Race coming up. Stake Wars will be for our operators and our proof of stake for the operator side of domains and everything along those lines. And our Space Race, as the name implies, will be a race to allocating some more space to the network. Obviously, we'll have some more details, but we hope those will be some exciting events as they come up. We've also been continuing to push our translation initiative. We're trying to get our documentation to be as localized as possible. So if you do speak a second language or know someone who does, we would love to see your contributions to our translations. I provided the guide there in the chat as well. And that way we can hopefully help make Subspace a more global network as we get it more reachable from everybody. Beyond that, thank you all for your hard work and your dedication, and we appreciate the great feedback. And thank you, Jim, for joining us today.
No worries. Thanks, everyone, and special thanks to Zorinox, who came up on stage and provided such wonderful insights. Thanks, everyone in the audience as well. I think we're going to call it here. So, yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.
Have a good day, everybody.